Dozens of people living in tents and RVs are being offered new places to live. This following a major cleanup operation at an encampment in Gardena.
A luxury RV lot overrun by squatters, trash piling up, trailers burning, and safety concerns growing.
Right now, across America, nearly 1 million people are sleeping in RVs, vans, and cars. Not because they want to travel, but because they have nowhere else to go. Teachers, veterans, retirees, families, all quietly pushed out of housing. And in 2026, that number is rising faster than anyone expected. Today, we're exposing why 900,000 Americans are losing shelter, and what happens if nothing changes. What most Americans don't realize is that RV and vehicle living is no longer a fringe lifestyle. By 2026, housing researchers, advocacy groups, and census-linked estimates suggest that close to 900,000 people are now relying on RVs, vans, and cars as their primary shelter. That number has nearly doubled since 2018, when vehicle homelessness was still under 500,000 nationwide. This population includes retirees, laid-off workers, gig drivers, military veterans, and families with full-time jobs. In states like California, Florida, Texas, and Arizona, vehicle dwellers now represent 20 to 30% of the unsheltered homeless population. In cities such as Los Angeles and San Diego, thousands of RVs line streets, industrial zones, and vacant lots every single night. What makes this crisis unique is that many of these people are technically housed in government statistics. They own a vehicle, they pay insurance, they pay registration, but they have no permanent address, no stable utilities, and no legal place to stay long-term. During past economic downturns, RV living used to be temporary. In 2026, it has become long-term survival. Many have lived this way for 2, 3, even 5 years straight. Once people fall into vehicle homelessness, escaping becomes extremely difficult. Without an address, it's harder to get work, healthcare, or government benefits. This is not a lifestyle trend or personal choice. It's a warning sign of a collapsing housing system. The numbers reveal a country where working people can no longer afford basic shelter, forcing hundreds of thousands into vehicles as their only remaining option for staying off the streets. At the heart of the RV homelessness crisis is one brutal reality. Housing costs rose faster than incomes for over a decade. Between 2013 and 2025, average U.S. rents increased by 42%, while median wages rose only about 18%. In major metropolitan areas, rent hikes were even more severe and devastating. In cities like Phoenix, Tampa, Austin, and Boise, rents jumped 60 to 90% in less than 10 years. A one-bedroom apartment that cost $900 in 2015 now rents for $1,600 to $2,000 monthly. For workers earning $18 to $22 per hour, that is simply impossible to afford on a sustainable basis. Financial experts recommend spending no more than 30% of income on housing. But by 2026, many renters are paying 50 to 65% of their paycheck just to keep a roof over their head. One missed paycheck, one medical bill, or one car repair is enough to trigger eviction proceedings. Homeownership is no escape either. Mortgage rates rising above 6.5% locked millions out of buying. Down payments now average over $40,000 in many housing markets across the country. As rents consumed paychecks, people began choosing between housing, food, and healthcare. RVs became the last affordable option available. A used trailer for $8,000 looks cheap compared to $24,000 per year in rent payments. This isn't about bad decisions or poor planning. It's about math that no longer works for working-class Americans trying to survive. One of the most tragic parts of this crisis is how many seniors are now living in RVs. By 2026, adults over 55 make up nearly 40% of vehicle dwellers in some Western states. Many worked their entire lives believing retirement would be stable and secure. Instead, they are sleeping in parking lots. The average Social Security check in 2026 is about $1,750 per month. In many cities, even the cheapest studio apartment costs $1,400 to $1,700 monthly. That leaves almost nothing for food, medicine, insurance, and basic utilities. Pensions have disappeared for most workers. Savings were drained by medical bills, caregiving costs, and inflation. Some seniors lost homes during the pandemic and never recovered financially. Others were forced out when property taxes and insurance became unaffordable on fixed incomes. Living in an RV becomes the only way to survive on Social Security alone. But aging in a vehicle is dangerous and degrading. Heat waves, cold winters, and lack of bathrooms put elderly residents at serious physical risk. Hospitals report rising admissions tied to exposure and dehydration among older vehicle dwellers. Many seniors also fear shelters due to safety and health risks, so they remain in RVs even when sick or injured. This is not retirement as promised. It's economic abandonment of people who worked for decades. The generation that built modern America now sleeps in vehicles because housing costs exceed their entire monthly income. Their golden years have become a daily struggle for survival and dignity. As RV homelessness has grown, many cities have responded with bans instead of solutions. By 2026, more than 140 U.S. cities have enacted restrictions on sleeping in vehicles, overnight parking, or long-term street camping. These laws are spreading rapidly across the country. These ordinances often limit parking to 2 to 4 hours, prohibit overnight stays entirely, or ban RVs from residential areas. Violations result in fines, citations, or immediate towing and impoundment. Cities argue these rules protect neighborhoods and property values, but for RV residents, they create constant instability and fear. People must move every night, searching for legal spots that no longer exist anywhere nearby. In Los Angeles alone, over 17,000 parking citations were issued to vehicle dwellers in 2025. Phoenix, San Jose, and Portland saw similar enforcement spikes, with thousands of tickets and warnings. Some cities require permits for safe parking programs, but these spots are severely limited. Waiting lists often exceed capacity by 300 to 400%, leaving most people without options. Instead of building affordable housing, governments are criminalizing poverty. People are treated as problems to be removed rather than citizens needing help and support. Every new ban pushes RV dwellers further from jobs, hospitals, and services, making recovery harder. Legal parking becomes impossible. Moving constantly exhausts resources. Fines accumulate into thousands of dollars. The result is not fewer homeless people. It's more desperate people with fewer safe places to go, trapped in an endless cycle of enforcement and displacement. One of the most devastating tools used against RV residents is the encampment sweep. These operations involve police, sanitation crews, and tow companies clearing entire streets of vehicle dwellers, often with little notice or alternative housing offered. In 2025 alone, California cities spent over $750 million on homeless sweeps and enforcement. Los Angeles averaged 50-plus operations per month. Each sweep can cost $100,000 to $500,000 in public resources. When RVs are towed, owners must pay $2,000 to $6,000 in fees to recover them. Most cannot afford this amount. Their home is permanently lost, along with everything inside. During sweeps, personal belongings are often destroyed: documents, medications, work tools, family photos. Replacing these is nearly impossible without money or storage facilities. Studies show that sweeps do not reduce homelessness overall. They only relocate it temporarily. After a sweep, most people reappear within weeks, poorer and more traumatized than before. Towing companies profit from impound fees. Cities appear cleaner to residents, but individuals lose everything they own in a single day. For many RV dwellers, one sweep ends any chance of stability or recovery. Without their vehicle, they become fully unsheltered overnight, forced onto sidewalks and into tents. It's not cleanup or public safety. It's displacement and destruction. Millions are spent moving people around instead of housing them. The result is more suffering, more trauma, and more people pushed deeper into crisis with no path forward. For many RV dwellers, staying legal has become almost as hard as finding a place to park. By 2026, the average cost of insuring an older RV ranges from $900 to $1,800 per year, depending on location, driving history, and coverage type. In high-risk states like California, Florida, and Texas, premiums are often even higher due to theft, wildfire, and storm risks. On top of insurance, vehicle registration, emissions testing, and inspection fees add another $300 to $700 annually. Some states now require additional safety certifications for older rigs, which can cost hundreds more per year. For someone living on $1,500 to $2,000 per month, these expenses are overwhelming and impossible. Missing a payment can mean losing coverage entirely. Driving uninsured risks fines, impoundment, and criminal charges. But paying insurance often means skipping meals or medical care. Many RV residents also struggle to renew documents because they lack a permanent address. Without proof of residency, renewing registration becomes complicated or impossible in some states. As costs rise, more people are forced to operate out of compliance with the law. This makes them easy targets for enforcement. A broken taillight plus expired registration can trigger towing and permanent loss. For thousands of vehicle dwellers, paperwork alone can determine whether they stay housed or lose everything overnight. Legal fees become a trap. Compliance becomes impossible. The system punishes people for being poor while offering no affordable alternatives for staying legal and safe. For years, campgrounds were the safest option for RV residents. They offered legal parking, bathrooms, electricity, and security. But by 2026, campground pricing has pushed long-term residents out completely. In 2010, many public and private campgrounds charged $20 to $30 per night. Today, the average private RV park rate ranges from $55 to $95 per night, with resort-style parks exceeding $120. Monthly rates that once cost $400 now average $900 to $1,400 in many regions. Utility fees, Wi-Fi charges, pet fees, and resort amenities add hundreds more per month. For people on fixed incomes, this is completely unaffordable. At the same time, many parks now restrict long-term stays. 14-day limits and seasonal-only policies are becoming common. Some parks ban older RVs entirely, requiring units newer than 10 years old. Public campgrounds are no solution either. Most limit stays to 7 to 14 days and close seasonally. Reservations are often booked months in advance by recreational users. As campgrounds turn into luxury destinations, low-income RV residents are forced back onto streets and industrial zones. The places that once provided safe, legal parking are now priced beyond reach. Safe, legal parking is disappearing, one price increase at a time. What was once an affordable refuge has become another closed door. RV residents who once relied on campgrounds for stability now face the same uncertainty as those sleeping on city streets. For decades, free overnight parking was a lifeline for RV and vehicle dwellers. Places like Walmart, Cracker Barrel, rest areas, truck stops, and large shopping centers quietly allowed overnight stays. By 2026, most of these options have disappeared entirely. Corporate policies have changed under pressure from cities, insurers, and nearby residents. Many national chains now enforce no overnight parking rules at nearly all locations. Violators face towing, fines, or police contact and removal. Rest areas have also tightened restrictions significantly. Over 35 states now limit stays to 4 to 8 hours, making overnight rest illegal. Some states use license plate tracking and surveillance to enforce time limits aggressively. Truck stops, once reliable refuges, are increasingly crowded by commercial drivers. Many now restrict RVs entirely or charge $15 to $30 per night for parking privileges. As free options vanish, RV residents are pushed into unsafe or remote areas. Abandoned industrial zones, floodplains, desert roads, or vacant farmland. These locations lack lighting, bathrooms, and emergency services entirely. This isolation increases risk of theft, assault, and medical emergencies. It also separates people from jobs, schools, and healthcare facilities. The loss of free parking doesn't just inconvenience RV dwellers. It removes the last safety net keeping thousands from full-street homelessness and exposure. What was once an informal social agreement, allowing tired travelers to rest safely, has been criminalized. Every parking lot that closes pushes vulnerable people further into Weishan and isolation with nowhere left to turn. Economic instability is a major driver of vehicle homelessness. Between 2022 and 2025, the U.S. experienced waves of layoffs across tech, retail, logistics, healthcare, and manufacturing. More than 4 million workers were displaced during this period alone. Many lost employer-sponsored housing benefits, relocation support, or emergency savings. With rents rising, laid-off workers often had only weeks before eviction proceedings began. Gig workers and contractors are especially vulnerable. Income fluctuates wildly. Health insurance is limited or non-existent. One slow month can mean losing housing completely. In surveys of vehicle dwellers, over 60% report having full-time or part-time jobs currently. They are not unemployed or lazy. They simply earn too little to afford rent in today's market. Remote work layoffs have also forced workers to relocate without resources. Some move into RVs hoping to travel for work. Others live in parking lots near warehouses, hospitals, and delivery hubs. Once housing is lost, finding new employment becomes harder. Employers often require addresses, stable transportation, and reliable internet access. Job loss doesn't just cause homelessness, it traps people inside it permanently. Without an address, getting hired is difficult. Without income, regaining housing is impossible. The cycle continues. What's happening is not a character failure. It's an economic system where losing one job can mean losing everything. Unemployment insurance runs out. Savings disappear. And the gap between paychecks and rent keeps growing wider, pushing more working Americans into RVs as their only remaining option for survival. Living in a vehicle exposes people to constant physical danger. In 2026, public health agencies report rising illness and injury rates among vehicle dwellers across the country. Heat is one of the biggest killers. Interior RV temperatures can exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit during summer months. In Western states, heat-related deaths among homeless populations have doubled since 2019, with elderly residents most vulnerable. Winter is equally dangerous. Without proper insulation and heating, temperatures inside vehicles can fall below freezing. Carbon monoxide poisoning from unsafe heaters is increasingly common and often fatal. Sanitation is another major issue. Many RV residents lack consistent access to showers, toilets, and clean water. This leads to infections, skin disease, and gastrointestinal illness that worsens over time. Crime is also rising. Isolated parking areas attract theft and violence. RV break-ins have increased in major metro regions by 25 to 40% since 2021, with residents losing valuables and documents. Medical access is severely limited. Without addresses, many cannot register with clinics. Missed appointments and untreated conditions become normal. Emergency rooms become primary care. Vehicle living turns ordinary health problems into life-threatening risks. A minor infection becomes sepsis. Diabetes becomes unmanageable. Survival becomes the daily focus, leaving no room for recovery or improvement. The human body is not designed for chronic exposure, sleep deprivation, and constant stress. Vehicle dwelling accelerates aging, worsens chronic conditions, and shortens lifespans measurably. One of the most hidden parts of the RV homelessness crisis is how many families are now living in vehicles. By 2026, school districts estimate that over 420,000 children nationwide experience some form of vehicle or motel homelessness each year. Many sleep in vans, SUVs, and small RVs with parents who are still working full-time jobs. These families often park near schools, libraries, and fast food restaurants to access Wi-Fi, bathrooms, and warmth. Children do homework in back seats. Parents cook on portable stoves in parking lots after dark. Frequent police checks and parking bans force families to move constantly. This disrupts school attendance significantly. Studies show homeless children are 3 times more likely to fall behind academically and drop out eventually. Privacy is almost non-existent. Teenagers struggle with embarrassment and isolation. Younger children face developmental delays linked to chronic stress and instability. Health risks are higher for children. Limited refrigeration affects food safety. Lack of consistent hygiene increases illness rates. Dental care and vaccinations are often missed. Many families avoid shelters due to safety concerns or separation policies. RV living becomes the least dangerous option available. These children are not runaways or troubled youth. They are victims of housing economics beyond their control. Their future is being shaped by instability they did not choose and cannot escape. Growing up without stable shelter creates trauma that lasts lifetimes. Education suffers. Health suffers. Hope diminishes as childhood becomes survival instead of growth and possibility. Living without stable shelter creates constant psychological pressure. Vehicle dwellers live in a permanent state of alertness, listening for police, worrying about theft, and planning where to sleep each night safely. Mental health surveys show that over 70% of long-term vehicle dwellers report symptoms of anxiety or depression. Nearly 40% show signs of post-traumatic stress disorder from repeated displacement and violence. Sleep is fragmented. Noise, fear, and cold disrupt rest. Chronic exhaustion worsens emotional health and decision-making ability over time. Social isolation is another major factor. Many hide their situation from friends, co-workers, and family. Shame prevents people from asking for help or maintaining relationships. Substance use often increases as people try to cope. Access to counseling is severely limited. Without insurance or addresses, mental health care becomes unreachable and unaffordable. The longer someone lives in survival mode, the harder it becomes to re-enter normal life. Decision-making weakens. Motivation declines. Hope disappears gradually. Mental decline is not a personal failure. It is a predictable result of prolonged insecurity and trauma. The crisis doesn't just destroy housing. It erodes people's sense of self and worth. Depression becomes rational. Anxiety becomes constant. Trust disappears. Even when housing becomes available, the psychological damage remains. Many struggle to adjust. Years of hypervigilance don't fade quickly. The mental health toll of vehicle homelessness extends far beyond the time spent living in an RV. It changes people permanently, leaving scars that take years of therapy and support to heal. When people lose housing, the system offers few realistic alternatives. Emergency shelters are overcrowded in most major cities. On any given night, over 30% of shelter seekers are turned away due to capacity limits. Many shelters limit stays to 30 to 90 days maximum. Others require religious participation, curfews, or strict schedules that conflict with work shifts and responsibilities. Some prohibit pets, partners, or possessions. For RV dwellers, this means abandoning family members or livelihoods entirely. Transitional housing has long wait lists. Public housing waits often exceed 5 to 10 years in major cities. Housing vouchers go unused because landlords refuse them or require income levels recipients cannot meet. Tiny home villages and safe parking programs exist, but capacity is tiny compared to demand. Some cities offer fewer than 200 spots for thousands in need. Without realistic options, people remain in vehicles indefinitely. The system is designed for short-term emergencies, not long-term economic collapse and displacement. RV living is not chosen freely. It is the only door left open when every other option has closed. Affordable housing development is too slow. Shelter capacity is insufficient. Voucher programs are underfunded. The gap between need and resources grows wider each year. Until alternatives exist at scale, vehicle homelessness will continue growing. People cannot choose housing that doesn't exist. They cannot access programs that are full. The system has failed, and millions are paying the price with their security and dignity. For decades, government housing policy has failed to keep pace with America's growing population and changing economy. Between 2010 and 2025, the United States underbuilt housing by more than 4 million units, according to national housing studies. This shortage created intense competition for every affordable apartment available. Local zoning laws are a major barrier. In many cities, over 70% of residential land is reserved for single-family homes, making it illegal to build affordable apartments, duplexes, or multi-unit housing. Even when developers propose low-income housing, neighborhood opposition often blocks projects for years. Federal housing programs are also severely underfunded. Only about 1 in 4 eligible low-income families receives housing assistance. Waiting lists for public housing and Section 8 vouchers commonly stretch 5 to 10 years or longer. Meanwhile, tax incentives favor luxury developments and short-term rentals. Investors receive benefits for building high-end units, while affordable housing receives limited support. Emergency rental programs that prevented mass evictions during the pandemic expired without permanent replacements. As protections ended, thousands fell behind on payments. Housing has been treated as a market commodity instead of essential infrastructure. Until governments prioritize shelter the way they prioritize roads, hospitals, and utilities, homelessness will continue to grow exponentially. The failure is not accidental. It reflects decades of policy choices that favored property values over human needs. Fixing this requires massive investment, zoning reform, and political will that has been absent for generations. The year 2026 represents a critical tipping point in America's housing crisis. Several long-term economic pressures are now converging at once, placing millions at risk simultaneously. First, pandemic-era protections are gone completely. Eviction moratoriums, emergency rental assistance, and expanded benefits ended, removing safety nets that kept families housed. At the same time, inflation has raised the cost of food, fuel, and utilities by over 25% since 2020, shrinking household budgets. Interest rates remain high, keeping mortgage payments elevated and locking renters out of home ownership. Adjustable rate mortgages issued in the early 2000s are now resetting, increasing payments by hundreds of dollars per month for many homeowners. Student loan payments have resumed for over 40 million borrowers, adding new financial strain. Healthcare premiums and insurance deductibles are also rising faster than wages. Meanwhile, cities are expanding enforcement budgets and anti-camping laws. More funding is going toward removal than housing creation. Demographers warn that retiring baby boomers, combined with shrinking savings, will push senior homelessness higher through the late 2000s. If no major reforms occur, analysts project vehicle homelessness could exceed 1.2 million people by 2028. 2026 is where temporary crisis becomes permanent reality. The convergence of these factors creates a perfect storm. Housing was already unaffordable. Now additional pressures are pushing millions closer to the edge. The time to act is now, before the crisis becomes irreversible and entire generations grow up without stable shelter. If current trends continue, RV and vehicle homelessness will become a permanent feature of American life. What is now considered an emergency will slowly turn into normal and accepted. Encampments will expand. More families will raise children without stable shelter. Hospitals will see rising emergency admissions linked to exposure, infection, and untreated illness. Public healthcare costs will grow into the billions annually. Employers will struggle to retain workers facing constant displacement. Productivity will decline. Local economies will weaken as instability spreads through communities. School systems will face higher dropout rates among homeless youth. Crime and victimization will increase in unregulated parking areas. Social services will remain overwhelmed and underfunded. Most concerning is the psychological shift. As more people live without housing, society risks becoming desensitized. Suffering becomes background noise. Urgency disappears gradually. When homelessness is everywhere, it stops feeling unacceptable. Without policy reform, affordable housing investment, and protection for vulnerable populations, the next decade could see millions living in vehicles, tents, and temporary shelters permanently. This is not inevitable. It is the result of choices. And every year those choices are delayed, the human cost multiplies. More families lose homes. More children grow up unstable. More seniors die in parking lots. The question is not whether we can solve this crisis. The question is whether we will. The resources exist. The solutions are known. What's missing is the political will to prioritize human shelter over profit and property values. This crisis isn't happening in the shadows anymore. It's happening in plain sight, and pretending not to see it is no longer an option. If you or someone you know has experienced this, share your story in the comments. And in our next video, we're exposing which states are cracking down the hardest and what it means for people living in RVs.